Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. Since today is Star Wars Day, we are doing a Star Wars double feature. And this is the 1985 adventure fantasy sci-fi family movie, Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. Here is your trivia question for today. Charles was a part of what group in the Star Wars universe that practiced the dark arts? The answer will be at the end of this video. This film is part of the Star Wars universe, but it has been said that it is not canonically connected to the major Star Wars movies. It is, however, the sequel to Caravan of Courage. Once again, we are now back on Endor, and we are back with the Ewoks, primarily Wicket, as he is one of the main characters. Now, some of the Taiwanese family has changed actors for this movie, like Paul Gleason plays Jeremit, which is interesting as this came out the exact same year as The Breakfast Club, where he plays Vice Principal Vernon. You actually don't get to see the face of Katerin, who plays the mother, at all in this film, and Mace only shows up for 33 seconds. He is, in fact, played by Eric Walker, same as the last movie, but both of the parents and Mace die right away at the beginning of the movie. What a dark way to start this story. So that leaves us with Sindel being the only remaining Taiwanese family member left alive. Now, the people that murdered almost all of the family and a lot of the Ewoks are marauders that work for an individual named Tarak. Tarek in the film is played by Karel Strucken, who you might recognize as Lurch from the first three Addams Family movies. Now, along with Tarek, you also have Chiral, who happens to be some sort of dark magic sorceress that can change into a raven. Now, Tarek is after a source of power that he will stop at nothing to get, including capturing all the Ewoks and murdering most of the Taiwanese family. Now, luckily, Wicket and Sindel manage to escape. Now, as they do so, they run into another creature named Teak, who apparently has super speed and shows them the way to a small cottage in the middle of nowhere that is owned by a bit of a rough and gruff hermit named Noah. Noah is played by Wilford Brimley. You might recognize him from quite a few commercials for Quaker Oats and, of course, for diabetes. Now, at some point in the film, Sindel gets captured again and is thrown into a prison with the other Ewoks. And now it's up to Noah, Wicket, and Teak to save the day as they have to go sneaking into the castle that belongs to Tarak. Apparently, we can blame the movie Heidi for the very dark beginning to this movie. George Lucas had recently watched the movie Heidi while they were finishing writing up the screenplay for this movie, and he told the Wheats that he wanted another beautiful story of an orphan and a hermit working together. Apparently, one of the biggest issues during this film, though, was Wilford Brimley. He refused to do anything the director said and would only allow himself to be directed by Joe Johnston, who was the production designer. One thing I find really fascinating about Ken and Jim Wheat, not only were they the writer and directors of this film, but they went from this to eventually doing the writing for the screenplays of Pitch Black and the Riddick movies. The Blurgs are creatures that first appeared in this film, but they would also show up in other animated Star Wars television series and a reappearance in The Mandalorian Season 1. There's also another creature that appears in this film that we only know the name due to a book that came out years later called The Wildlife of Star Wars: A Field Guide, and this creature is actually called a condor dragon. One thing I definitely learned from this movie and from Return of the Jedi: you don't mess with Ewoks if they have an opportunity to set up stuff in the forest. They are going to Home Alone the hell out of that area. There were rumors for some time now that there was going to be a third Ewoks movie, and I would still watch it. In my opinion, if they ever did it, I think they should absolutely make it a Disney Plus series, and it should be Sindel being grown up and coming back to Endor on another adventure. So I did still enjoy this film, and it was a fun 80s adventure movie, but I do have to say it lost a lot of its luster from the first movie. I don't know if it's because they dropped the narrator or if the story was just a bit darker than it should have been, but there was just something I didn't like about this film. So I'm going to give this movie a 3 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question, Charles was a part of what group in the Star Wars universe that practiced the dark arts? So whether or not this is still canon, Charles is actually a member of the Night Sisters, which you can see a lot about them in the cartoon animated series Star Wars The Clone Wars. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. If there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.